that might be just.
Oh, you could chunk it earlier.
I'm not trying to shoot you away.
No. You're right. I'll speak for him. Get him in trouble.
Good evening and welcome to the June 20th meeting of the Montgomery Economic Development Corporation. It is 6 p.m. We have a quorum. We are only missing Mr. Angelo. I'd like to open with public comments. We have two people. First to turn in her form is Ms. Duncan. Please approach the podium.
I'm Mrs. Duncan. I live here in the city on Horsham Street. I'm here concerned about spending $600,000 for a vacant lot on the northeast corner of Viva and Liberty Streets. The city already has 2 vacant lots. Why do we need a third? They've already spent $944,000 on the other 2 lots. And they're not being used for anything at all yet. I can't see having a $600,000 welcome to Montgomery lot with a monument, maybe a few concrete seats for people to sit on that a lot of people probably won't be sitting on. And why not, maybe $200,000. Why not put the rest of that money to people who need better quality of life, especially people north of town who are suffering from heat, maybe a leaky roof. It would be better used for somebody like that, maybe to keep somebody from dying from the heat. How much is a little AC unit or 2 AC units? We already have a welcome garden that's been sitting there on 105 where it makes the Y since 1986. Why do we need a $600,000 one? It would be better off spent for sidewalks also, where the sidewalks are needed. The only time a bench or 2 would be used there where they want to spend the $600,000 would probably be during an event. Anyway, it's a little too much money just to say, welcome to Montgomery.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Duncan. And next we have Ms. Galt speaking about Friends of the C.B. Stewart West Branch Library.
Hello. I was here last fall in front of the City Council and talked about the economic benefits of the library to the city of Montgomery, and all of that is in here, and I know I have to talk fast.
We'll give you the time you need, don't worry.
Anyway, a lot of people don't know we have a library. Some people don't care that we have a library, but a lot of people do, and all these new subdivisions that are coming in, anybody that's within the Montgomery ISD boundaries is going to use that library if they know it's there. What I'm really here for this time is to make sure that the library is part of the whole wayfinding issue. We brought 94,425 people into the city of Montgomery in 2018. Imagine what that's going to be in 2028. It is a big draw. Those people stay in Montgomery and spend their money. They go to Chick-fil-A, they go to Kroger's, they stop and get their oil changed, and it is definitely a big draw. It's also free, and it's a great equalizer to all the people in Montgomery who don't have computers at home and get books and go in and use a computer for free. It offers a lot to the city of Montgomery, but people don't know we're there. Same with Fernland and Memory Park. We're all there together. Doesn't matter that the library is part of the county. It does so much for the city of Montgomery, and you guys should be lucky that it's here. It serves a lot of people, does lots of great things that people don't know about. Friends of the Library has a very small budget, but we aim to fill in the cracks where the county can't provide. We do all the children's program. We pay for the children's program. We pay for the adult programs. We buy books that have been cut from the county budgets. We buy computers. If we have to be a part of that wayfinding signage, ask us, and we'll tell you if we can't do it. Our budget, the Friends of the Library budget's less than $15,000 a year, and we do it strictly through fundraisers. But it's important to let people of this part of Montgomery County know that that library is here. And what it can do for the library. We're moving out into social media, so there's more awareness. And it's just a great place to go. People don't know it's there. 7,595 people used the public computers at the library during 2018. Those are the most recent statistics, because of course COVID messed it up. Okay, and all these things are free, and all you have to do is go and ask, and people will help you. The other thing I'd like to request is that the city consider putting the library on the website as things to do or explore Montgomery. Again, that's so free. It's free. And it is an important part of this pretty small city. We serve a lot of people all the way out to April Sound, down to Ridgewood Lake Shores, Anyway, that's my spiel, and I sure hope that you like the library.
Thank you. And actually, based on something that Duncan said, and something I remember from last year, your director just said that we should also publicize the library as a cooling resource. Now the temperatures are so hot, the library did it last year, and it's nice to know that people can go there, they're welcome there. Even if they're not big readers, they can go there to cool off.
Yeah, they just do a puzzle, or they could read magazine,
Or to take their children.
or sit. Yeah, children have preferences, children preferences or something.
Exactly. So
Okay.
the library is part of our community, and we appreciate your time.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyway,
All right, thank you. All right, item number 1, approval of minutes. We have several different minutes. Consideration of possible action regarding the following: special meeting minutes of May 11th, 2022, regular meeting minutes of May 16th, 2022, and an EDC budget workshop of June 9th, 2022. If you would like to take them separately, we can, or we can take them all at once. What's your preference?
All at once is good,
Okay.
unless somebody had some corrections or something. But
I thought it looks good.
I didn't
myself.
see anything.
Anyone?
It's fine. It's fine.
So let's entertain a motion then.
I'll make the motion to approve the minutes as following: special meeting minutes of May the 11th, regular meeting minutes of May the 16th, and the MEDC budget workshop of June the 9th.
I'll second it.
It has been moved and seconded. I'll pick Byron for the second, that we approve all 3 meeting minutes as presented: special meeting minutes of May 11th, regular meeting minutes of May 16th, and MEDC budget workshop of June 9th. This motion is debatable, amendable, and requires a majority vote. Any further discussion on this item? All those in favor of approving the aforementioned minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. The motion passes unanimously, and we will approve the special meeting minutes of May 11th, the regular meeting minutes of May 16th, and the MEDC budget workshop of June 9th. All right, item number 2, consideration of possible action regarding the financial report. Carol?
Yes, ma'am. On the interest rate, it's 0.74%. Last month it was 0.33, so it has gone up. We're gonna make a little money there. The sales tax transfer of $92,948.70 will show up on the next report, but that's what we got for the May through June. On the second page, the events revenue was from the Antiques Festival. That's a new line item that we agreed to. And then I see where we did write the check to the Texas Historical Commission for the application on the historical home. Other than that, unless you have some questions, I think it was all, it was okay.
Anyone have any questions for Carol? All right then, would someone like to make a motion on approving the financial report?
I'll make a motion to approve the financial report for this, is it this month? June? Or, no, May? May.
That's May
2022?
financial report, yeah.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the financial report as presented. This motion is debatable, amendable, and requires a majority vote. Any further discussion on this item? All those in favor of approving the May financial report as presented say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. The motion passes unanimously, and we will approve the May financial report. Item number 3, Mr. Diggs is actually not in town. We should have actually pushed this off a month. So with your permission, I'll move on to item number 4. Consideration and approval of the amendment to the MEDC budget FY 2021, FY 2022. I believe you all know what this one is about. If you click on way down to page, let's see, this will be 50. This is what we had talked about when we were talking about pavers on 105. We wanted to adjust the name of our budget item from downtown development improvements to downtown and corridor development improvements, so that we can invest our funds more than just in the downtown area. Any questions or comments on that item?
Are those parameters basically from 2854 to the high school? More or less?
Yeah, I think, and on 149 as well.
Yeah, and then north and south on 148, from the, I guess,
Rather than just
the railroad to north of
anything within the city
1097.
limits. I think we've struggled to invest outside the city limits, given, you know, where our taxpayer dollars are generated and who we serve.
Yeah.
But within our city limits and the corridor, and I suppose if circumstances change, we might be able to argue that Lone Star Parkway would also be a corridor.
Right. Yeah.
So why not make them two separate items? One downtown, the other corridor, doesn't matter?
I mean, given the way that our budget has worked out and our spending works out, it seems like these bigger ticket items come in waves. It's kind of it's difficult to budget for something that we don't see in advance specifically, so it kind of makes sense to have a basket that you would expect to be used for either or, but, you know, specifically for that type of items. And if you were to break it up into two different ones, you might not get as much of a move for one or the other, and you'd have some expiring for, say it was for corridor, you know, gosh, only I had budgeted for downtown, whereas if you keep it in one, you've got more firepower that can be used for either, depending on how the projects pan out. And we can always go for a budget amendment later, should that happen, but it is easy to not have to do budget amendments if we don't have to.
I also think it makes sense with the general overall plan is to be able to tie people into the downtown, tie it all together. It makes sense to have something that has that dual capacity there.
Definitely with our downtown master plan, it's clear that, you know, it's not just downtown that's impacted, it's really the approaches to Montgomery that are important. And, you know, we look at, you know, how the city, where the city generates taxpayer dollars and that kind of thing. You know, our economic drivers are not in downtown, they're outside, so it makes sense to include those other areas for enhancing and making our overall appearance strong outside of downtown.
And just the natural growth is coming from outside, and so if you create those gateways,
Right, and also looking at what tech stuff has done to us, that I think really,
that's the other thing, yeah. You get caught sleeping, and they're gonna go right past you, so, and do whatever they want.
That's it.
Great, that was an eye opener.
We're too late on trying to
Yeah.
decorate those meetings. So.
Well, I'll make a motion, we approve the amendment to the MEDC budget line item from downtown development improvements to downtown and corridor development improvements.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve, amend the MEDC budget line item from downtown development improvements to downtown and corridor development improvements. This motion is debatable, amendable, and requires a majority vote. Any further discussion on this item? Those in favor of amending the MEDC budget line item from downtown development improvements to downtown and corridor development improvements, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. The motion passes unanimously, and we will amend the MEDC budget line item from downtown development improvements to downtown and corridor development improvements. And just as a note, City Council has already approved this budget amendment as well, so we're ready to go whenever. Item number 5, presentation on the update of the MEDC budget FY 2022, FY 2023. On Thursday, a quorum of us met at the community center and went through the first draft of the 2022-2023 budget. The main highlights were that we decided on a top line sales tax increase of 4%, which felt conservative at the time, and given more news and more economic data, seems actually potentially a little risky. So we can talk about that later. There's a large increase in the downtown and corridor development improvements line item to account for the investments being made in the Cowan Street phase of the downtown design master plan. And also we added 2 additional line items in category 2, downtown and corridor facade and environments enhancement, and also investment incentives road fund. We'll have another budget workshop scheduled for the end of this month, and the changes that, or the initial suggestions are on the next page, that's page 54, for everyone to look at, and that's going to be our starting point at our next budget meeting, workshop meeting. Any questions? So this is not an action item. So if no one has any questions or comments, then we'll move on to item number 6. Consideration of possible action for MEDC to sponsor the Montgomery Chamber of Commerce's Freedom Fest Parade, including sponsorship of up to $3,000 for its costs of public works and police security. Dave, do you want to take this one?
Certainly. So in looking at some of the costs and things that are associated with the events, as you guys know, we've talked about before, security is one of those items. And as a way to participate in the event or to sponsor the event, this would be a financial contribution from the EDC that would be going directly to the security costs. It wouldn't be passed through necessarily the chamber to reimburse anything. This will be to defray the actual personnel costs that are the city employees essentially that are used for this. They're used in their off-duty hours. Obviously, the event's on a Saturday. When they look at the police security and things, they interface with the on-duty officers, but it's not our on-duty officers that are working, the security for the event. So, you have to answer any questions or thoughts you have on it.
Have we done this in the past? That you know?
For quite a few events are paid directly through the MEDC, and not for the
Freedom Fest.
The Freedom Fest, but it would be in line with a lot of other ones that we've done.
Right.
I did them at both music. The first year
Was directly paid through MEDC. I'm trying to think. So the pep parade, we have the Halloween parade we did, or the big event downtown, the Halloween event. There are a couple others that we've done. I think for veterans, we pay for the police directly. It's just one way of basically making sure that the money that we spend is specifically geared towards what we intended it to go for, and especially for an event like this where they don't really raise any money.
Right.
It makes, the 4th of July event is kind of a hometown celebration. It's not supposed to raise money, but they have the costs that are put on by the city, so it kind of is a big expense for them.
Have they had the police and security at Freedom Fest in the past? Surely they
should
did.
have had last year. In previous years, the city has absorbed all of the security costs for all of the events. And the taxpayers had done it without any accounting for how much the city ever
Right.
absorbed for anything. So 4 or 5 years ago, the city started charging for that to at least account for it. And, outside events needed to start paying for city services that they were using, and then internal events, the city would decide how to budget that. And then events like this that are outside but integral to the city's image and stuff like that, it's kind of a question of how to cover that cost when it's not an official city event.
The security in particular, just the cost associated with it, and we've seen it as just the reality of the circumstances in today's world. But again, a lot of these smaller events, they say, well, we don't need that security, don't want that security. We as a city, it's our role to say, hey, there is some need to, analyze the situation, make sure that, that you've got, the adequate security, forces there to cover anything that would happen. And so that's, again, a lot of the smaller events, again, that aren't geared toward, something like a wine fest where there's a revenue component of it. Just have a real hard time absorbing the cost. And, like Becky said, it's one of those things that the city in turn, puts on them, because we say, look, we can't have this event without the security, in place, because this is what our team has looked at, and this is what they believe is going to be, needs to be there to keep people safe. So, again, it's one of the, I guess, the most discussed hurdles to some of the smaller events that, that happen in the city.
It's not a revenue generator by itself. It's contributing to other businesses.
Right, yeah.
And, these costs, so there's a certain level that is just, absorbed by the city when you get to, say, the planning efforts and the meetings that happen beforehand to determine the needs. What these costs would go for would be specifically to the paychecks of the guys that are out on the street, on duty. Wouldn't necessarily cover, say the PD's time on a Wednesday to have a staff meeting about this. This would be for the guys that are out, actually working the event. So actual cost and not anything that's.
Looks like they're shutting down 105 and 149, so we're definitely gonna have to have security.
Right.
And it's the 4th of July parade.
Right.
That's what we're all about.
It's a
Bottom line.
it's needed. We've done it for how many years?
However, quite a few.
Yeah, I think you'd get a lot of resistance if we.
Well, and it's one of those things that, you also have the whole, Chamber of Commerce is organizing it, they do a great job with it. And,
Right.
If they aren't
Brings
going to
people
do
to
it
town.
because of the expense, then somebody else has to do it. And, somebody has to pay that cost, and the city could do the organizing, but who at the city is
Who's
going
gonna
to do
head
it
it
right now? And, you'd rather have somebody who's doing a great job at it continue it, where the city is, paying for the cost of the officers, because it's a good relationship to have, somebody else is organizing it and doing it, continuing to do a great job, and it shows the city as a best.
Yep.
Well, I'll make a motion to approve the expenditure of not to exceed $3,000 to cover the expense of Montgomery Public Works employee and Montgomery police officers to work the Freedom Fest parade, which is scheduled for July the 2nd.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to approve an expenditure of not to exceed $3,000 to cover the expense of Montgomery Public Works employee and Montgomery police officers to work the Freedom Fest on July 2nd. This motion is debatable and movable and requires a majority vote. Any further discussion on this item? All those in favor of approving an expenditure of not to exceed $3,000 to cover the expense of a Montgomery Public Works employee and Montgomery police officers to work the Freedom Fest parade on July 2nd, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. The motion carries unanimously, and we will approve an expenditure of not to exceed $3,000 to cover the expense of a Montgomery Public Works employee and Montgomery police officers to work at the Freedom Fest parade on July 2nd. And as an aside, we have plenty of money in our events budget line item. Item number 7, discussion and possible action on the purchase of real property located at 2150 Eva Street, Montgomery, Texas, in the amount of $600,000. I'd like to start out by saying that we have discussed this before in executive session and only in executive session. But the description of the event or of the action item is as follows. The MEDC's downtown design master plan's vision is to create a beautiful historic downtown that provides an enjoyable customer experience throughout the week and enables businesses to thrive. One of the opportunities identified in the plan was the corner at Highway 105 and 149, which is currently leased by the city of Montgomery and contains an electronic sign. This corner is highly visible with an estimated 25,000 to 35,000 vehicles traveling past it per day. Our long-term lease access to the corner has given the city the ability to communicate with residents and visitors to provide a hint that the corner is the gateway to the historic downtown. Purchasing the property would provide the opportunity for a larger, highly visible landmark to be constructed that welcomes visitors and celebrates historic Montgomery, Texas. Additionally, the purchase of the property by the city would prevent the construction of what would likely be a fast food restaurant, gas station, or other commercial establishment that would be attracted to the high-traffic corner. While the commerce would be welcome, it would detract from the historic nature of our downtown and prevent the establishment of a gateway to downtown, which is needed. At this time, there is no plan for a monument or any change to the electronic sign. The city and MEDC are content with the terms of the lease on the property, but the property owner wishes to sell, which is what is driving the timing of the transaction. I'd like to also point out that the MEDC has been represented by Wade Nelson, who is a board member. He has very graciously waived his fee for this transaction. The price being paid for the property, which is slightly over 0.4 acres, will be $600,000. It is a high price point for raw land in the downtown area, but the high traffic volume and corner lot make it particularly valuable. The purchase should be paid out of accumulated funds. At this price point, it would not be in MEDC's best interest to borrow, as the origination fees would be too high. Does anyone have anything that they wish to say in addition to what I just read into the record? The recommendation is to approve the purchase of Adams Park for $600,000 to be purchased with MEDC's bank balance. The contract for the item has been signed by both the MEDC president and Ms. Adams.
Now, all I have to say is I'm not agreeing to it being called Adams Park at this time.
Okay,
So
I think that that's totally fair.
I mean, I'm sure that's what it's going to be called, more than likely something with that, but I'm not calling it Adams Park at this
I think that we should have either a naming contest or another item on the next agenda to decide what to name it once it becomes legally ours, because at no time was the naming rights or anything like that discussed in the purchase price of the item. So I totally agree with what you just said.
No, we didn't.
I'm
We
sorry.
didn't let that be part of the contract.
I had to do that.
However, I guess we could allow naming rights to lower the purchase price. So if the corporation made this name, I'd totally be fine with it. Name it Langley State Park.
For a $200,000 reduction.
Exactly.
No,
Brian, you
no,
looked like you
no,
had
no.
something you wanted to say?
No, it's just, it is a high price point. Do we happen to know publicly what the average going price for land, vacant land in downtown area is?
I think it really reflects just based on the location itself. There's not, and to get to your point, Ms. Duncan, it's just, there's opportunity costs involved, and once this expired, and once this transacts, and whether it becomes something that we don't want there, or if it's something that the city gets control of, there's a price point that at some point you decide whether it's worth it or not. And
So the reason for a higher price point is opportunity costs. I think that should be clear.
very much so, but also there's a lot of comps in the $30 a foot range. Where we're at,
What are we
is
at right now?
24.
And some potential.
It's a high profile corner.
Some potential commercial real estate that could come in here would be, we're thinking gas station.
It would be
Something along that line.
It would be uses that you would not want. It's not desirable uses because there's not a lot that can fit on that size site. And if you get a fast food user or another Best Donuts or whatever it is, it's not the highest and best use of that location.
And I think also the last few years have shown us the flexibility and creativity of some of the developers that, you say, oh no, that could never fit on that land, and then you're like, whoa.
Yeah, they can make it happen.
I am
Right.
surprised by what people are able to fit in.
Right,
on
yeah, the last thing you want is RV showing up at the Main and Main in Montgomery.
I guess the city has, and the EDC has, we're really limited on what you can prevent from being developed there. So our hands are tied in that respect. I would think it would be a shame to have, some type of gas station or donut shop over there in the corner, especially with it being right next to the historic building. I'm for it. I think it's a high price point, but I think we're paying for the opportunity cost with it. Who knows? It would be a huge missed opportunity if we let it slip by. So, on the Virginia Adams, she owns the two properties to the north. Is that correct?
So the Historical Society owns the one immediately to the north, and then
I thought they
Miss
just
Adams-
leased it out with her, or they did at least. Is it a lease
It
back?
is under a gift deed to the Historical Society, and then Miss Adams will still own the piece of property that's bounded by 149 Caroline Street and McCown Street.
Do we have any updates on what's going on with their situation?
Yeah, but there is a default clause, correct, if they're not,
Well, that's what's under dispute, right? The default
Right.
clause. There's
if they're not owing up to what they agreed to do.
I'm not sure exactly what
Okay.
the status is of that, and I wouldn't want to comment on
Okay.
that at this time.
Okay.
And so the Montgomery Historic Society owns that piece of property, and then the one on north of that, that's vacant, that's Miss Adams' property.
Right, and I believe the city's lease covers that northern piece as well, so I believe our lease with Ms. Adams would endure after the purchase of the southern piece.
Is that a yearly lease, or is it a 10-year lease, or every 3 years they negotiate that?
There's been a has been a 5-year term in the past, and I think it went to a 3-year this go round. We would probably do a separate lease, kind of maybe.
Are the sellers or the owners, are they showing favor towards the city to work with us in the future?
Yes, I would say so. Wouldn't,
And this piece of property was on the downtown improvement plan, and it did include a sign, but also there were some alternatives that included other facilities. So I wouldn't say it's just benches and a sign.
Right.
We had other plans for it, and we had it planned to connect through with the neighboring properties at some point as well.
There are a lot of different
Yeah.
options, none of which has to happen immediately.
It may
Also, none of which can happen if there's an Arby's there or Arby's or any other thing. So,
there's
if we could leave the electronic sign there for 30 years, I think that would make people very happy. You don't have to do anything, but you can't do anything if it changes hands. That's really the big conundrum of where we find ourselves is, Ms. Adams.
this won't be the first or the last. I mean,
and the good thing about land in this area is going to continue appreciating in value.
Correct.
Without a doubt. Maybe we have a recession here in the short term, but in the long term, we know this is a growing area and it's always going to be appreciating in value. So even if we're paying a higher price now, I think at some point we'll be able to get a return on it.
I would agree with
If
you can't go wrong with corners at a lighted intersection
so.
On a major thoroughfare.
on a major thoroughfare.
I did not read in the lease thing, did we get a survey or we're getting a survey?
We will need to get a survey. It would be foolish of us not to.
Okay.
Right.
And this is a cash transaction, is what you're saying?
I believe we should. We have the bank balance to do it, and the cost, the origination fees for us would be outrageous if we were to borrow to make this happen.
And we need city approval.
We do.
And then it goes to city council this next
On Tuesday.
meeting.
If we approve it.
Do we have to do public hearings on this at all?
I don't believe we do.
And what was the discussion on the graves? We think that is all just hearsay, or we're going to find out about that, or we don't need to find out about it if we're not going to do any
I don't think
improvement?
I don't think, well, we definitely don't need to if we're not doing any improvement. If we, and anything that we've envisioned at this point would not be butting up against the edge of the fence where the rumors are that they would be located. And any, Jim's, vision has the monument more on the southwest corner. So I think that it's very low risk, and in terms of bank funding, obviously if we're doing it ourselves, we're not required to ascertain that one way or the other.
Is the building that's owned by the Historic Society, is it a registered building? Do we know that?
I believe it is with the Texas Historical Society.
Yeah, it's got the plaque and the registration.
The Matt Davis.
Yes.
The plaque out front is Lake Creek though.
Yeah.
Lake Creek's
That's
the
true,
one.
yeah.
So there shouldn't be anything
I can look.
about the graves with the sale of the property. I just don't want that to come up if there's somebody here that knows about it. I mean,
Yeah, without doing a archaeological survey, you have no idea. But again, to her point, which is if you don't do any improvements,
right, okay.
it's kind of,
And Ms. Adams had told me that that was always just a family story and that the marker was put there without her permission by some students some time ago.
Okay.
I think it would be reasonable to believe that the city would not be inclined to make any kind of moves whatsoever until whatever's going to happen with the two northerly pieces of property happen. So maybe a few years before that actually pans out.
but that, it's a gray area, so just be careful about the graves. It's, you want to be for sure that, you know what you're getting into.
I just know the property at 2854, I'm going to call it the Hill, when H-E-B and Home Depot were planning on coming, they somehow or another, the monument that's behind there got involved in that, and they couldn't do any more work on the property that they wanted to because of that. And that was not connected to them at all, but it did get involved in their work at that time. So I don't know exactly what happened, but I do remember that.
So the cottage is a registered Texas Historic Landmark.
Landmark?
Yeah, it has a medallion and a plate on the building, apparently. But it's on the atlas, the Texas Historic Commission atlas.
Thank you.
I mean, if we wanted, we could pay for an archaeological survey. I mean, it's not, I would imagine the ground penetrating radar is not super,
No, it's not an expensive study. It's just, a lot of, it comes into play a lot of times if you have a lender. But in this case, we don't have a lender involved, so it's not required. You're not looking at a resale or a development, so it's not required. But in the future, if you do decide to sell it, and that pops up, then you might have
is
an
that
issue.
something we want to do as part of our due diligence?
Is that something that we can add to our contract?
I don't want this board to not be here when something is going to happen to the land and they find the graves and then they're like,
I mean,
why didn't someone do it before now? I mean, I don't have any idea what you do or money-wise
I
or
mean, honestly,
anything.
you always kind of plan for the future, obviously, and it's an expensive piece of real estate. The idea that it would sit there as a park for the next 50 years probably is not ideal, highest, best use. And, the city could even benefit from developing something there and leasing it out, in the future. Or it could be a city building. It's probably a worthwhile study. I would never tell you not to do it.
Oh, no. I mean,
Well, then let's add that to our list of things that we do during the due diligence phase.
Yeah, and maybe you get a price reduction because of that. Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of things that help prevent a property from being developed,
Well, and also at the very least, and it sounds terrible, but if they're her relatives, then she needs to decide what happens to them too. I mean,
Sure.
It's an antiquated version, but, if they were babies that died before they were baptized, then they were buried outside of consecrated ground, and people have a much different attitude towards that like now. And, if they're really there, then she may prefer to have them buried in a churchyard.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what's the next step?
So, someone would like to approve the purchase of real property located at 21050 Eva Street, Montgomery, Texas, in the amount of $600,000 pending the due diligence and the approval of city council.
I'm gonna exclude myself because I'm helping the y'all tell me.
I'll make the motion.
Okay. So, is that your motion? So I just said-
No, that's what you just said.
You didn't want to repeat it.
I can repeat it.
All right.
Do I need to repeat it?
No, you don't.
Okay, what you said.
Okay. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the purchase of real property located at 21050 Eva Street, Montgomery, Texas, in the amount of $600,000 pending the due diligence item. This motion is debatable, amendable, and requires a majority vote. Any further discussion on this item? Those in favor of approving the purchase of real property located at 21050 Eva Street, Montgomery, Texas, in the amount of $600,000 pending the due diligence item, say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. The motion carries unanimously, and we will purchase the real property located at 21050 Eva Street, Montgomery, Texas, in the amount of $600,000 pending the due diligence item. Item number 8, discussion and possible action regarding a professional services agreement between the MEDC and Gunda Corporation LLC for engineering services for McCown Street improvements. Dave?
All right, let me jump over here real quick. So in your packet, you have the exhibits, which are the scope of work And sorry, somehow not. Okay, frozen now. So again, attached is your scope of work, along with fee schedule. For those of you who look through this, Ryan, you've got the background here to be able to kind of speak, to a lot of this stuff. I know that if you're gonna, say, well, is there any input that you would like to have, or do you feel more comfortable just saying, look, I just don't want to, participate in the discussion?
I'm not going to participate in the
Okay.
discussion on this item.
I think you can now since,
Well, I think there's a potential for it to come back up if there's not an agreement on the contract. So,
okay.
I mean, typically, the process is not fully, done at this point, so I mean, there could be a rolling too, so I see what your point.
yeah, I'd feel more comfortable if I just
Okay.
abstained.
That's fine.
Discussion.
Does anyone else have any thoughts on this? So the scope of work kind of covers, obviously, what they're doing and where.
And just in general terms, this goes all the way through, the proposal is all the way through construction administration, which is kind of in layman's terms, once everything is all the way built. You see the project area there in the, I'm looking on, I don't have my, which page I'm looking at there, but you see the drawing down there showing the kind of, we're looking at two things. We're looking at including the potential reroute of the northbound traffic there next to the steakhouse area, as well as the little pedestrian plaza in between 401 College, which is the chemical building, and the Steamboat building there on McCown. So we've got the two intersections on the north and south at Carolina College, as well as the public space. You'll see that where the Naughty by Nature and Wine and Design is there on the map, you'll notice that that is a private parking lot that is included in there. And without speaking to that, they realized that a rerouting of that parking lot traffic would have to happen if we're going to turn the northern half of McCown into a plaza and use the area there by the steakhouse to exit to Maiden. We've got to essentially turn that parking lot into a one-way headed south. But I realize it's kind of a convoluted description there, but if you're heading north on McCown, you're going to run into the plaza. So you're going to turn into the steakhouse parking lot. You either go straight over to Maiden and into some public parking that hopefully will exist there at some point, or you enter the steakhouse parking lot. But again, it kind of reverses the flow of that parking lot. It's a one-way parking lot now. It just needs to get turned and go the other way. Again, that's a design improvement to private property, but it is the linchpin to making the circulation, the vehicular circulation on McCown work, because we've got to come to a
So is that just a resurfacing and restriping or what?
right, any minor surface stuff that needed action, and then just a restriping. It's not that the parking lot's in terrible shape, but again, it's kind of a TBD item, but those are the, that would be the minimum of it, and very likely the extent.
How does that play into the drainage plan? I mean, do you have?
So it'll count today with what, so the council will be considering at their next meeting a downtown drainage master plan study. That again kind of takes the existing conditions of today and ensures that, any improvements made to the storm system accounts for future add-ons to that system, either as some of these sites, start to develop and do something different, or whether or not it's a new parking lot or something like that. There's an area drain down there at the corner and kind of at the bottom of the hill of this parking lot, but I know that it definitely needs improvement. But this would really not be at the direction of the circulation of this parking lot, being that it's existing, wouldn't really come into play other than just being counted as, it's already an impervious surface.
Yeah, not needed for a duct or anything to run through there. Even though there is some carryover between the two bits of work, we approved, what, $50,000? The engineers were going into that study already. That is separate from all of this.
Right.
This is all above ground that we're
That's
looking
right.
at here. So
Yep.
we've already initiated these studies underneath the ground,
Right.
but they still have to talk to each other and they have to be on the same page.
The city engineer did send back some comments today on the proposed agreement, and, nothing out of line or out of sorts, just, question, comments for clarification on a handful of items, but nothing that.
It's good to see the ADA in there because that has been a matter of public comments lately about some places are not ADA accessible.
Well, generally speaking, McCown has just been dangerous for people of all abilities, with the different levels and the fact that it dips in the middle and,
It's a bit hazardous.
yes. The shop entrances are all off kilter with the street.
Just speaking on the budget a little bit, it's a big number. It's a number that spans 2 years in terms of your budget planning and how you look at and do things. As noted here, you've got 168,000 and change in this year's budget under the line item, and I forget what the draft was, but the draft's got, the draft budget for next year would have enough funds to be planning on this, on the back half of this project running through. Again, one of the points that we want to clarify is just kind of what happens when and where that timeline is, going to tighten up the timeline of the project, so we know, again, kind of where those financial milestones are going to be.
My preference would be to, put a big chunk of our downtown and corridor enhancement money into this early and then not pay very much from next year until we hit some major milestones. So pay up front, I assume Grinda's good for the money, based on past work anyway and your reputation, and then, use our money from next fiscal year, since, we're 3/4 of the way almost through this fiscal year. We know we've got a lot of room in our budget this year, but we don't know what next year's bringing. So it makes sense to spend more of our money from this budget, which means we need a bill dated before September 30th. So I know, it's typical to pay, for completion, but that, we might get a little bit off a little bit to account for the fiscal year. Does that sound like that would be a problem?
I don't think so. So the total of this proposal is like 286 something, is that what we're saying? And we're wanting to go ahead and move on the 168 or what? That we have?
I mean, I would say like 150, 160.
Yeah, the heavier
upfront,
part of
and
that.
then not pay again until they're like 75% complete, until, and that would be,
If we want 150, then the next year you're about 130 away, 135.
We don't have to pin that down. If you guys just have a direction that you want to go, which it sounds like you do, then, that's something we can talk to them again, do that timeline on and be able to compare them. Okay, exactly where do we get in the schedule, and just make sure it all aligns and meshes the way it should.
and is that something I would be comfortable with? And it's a little bit, like I said, out of, like when you're building a construction project, you get milestones, but
This work was 9 months, if I remember reading right. It's kind of a 9-month deal. You prove it now, you're getting almost ready to get ready for the next year's budget anyway. So, yeah, I think 150 or so thousand's a good number.
okay. Any comments on the scope itself? Area looks good, especially the pass-throughs, I think, are kind of, and, it's on private property, so that's different for us. The rationale would be, like Dave said, the circulation of parking, and then also the pedestrian circulation. That was something that Jim really brought up in the downtown design master plan, is that, you know, we need pedestrians walking, and then from a practical perspective, you know, the city has property over across the way, so we need to have people safely transiting to there, preferably not in the middle of a parking lot while they're walking. That's the reason for that.
Community center right here.
It's really nice to see that, you know, we have some
Buildings there.
already plans in design or possible
Okay, that's very
to
good.
get that traffic out of McCown. You've got it on Pond Street, you've got potential on Prairie and whatnot, and so, yeah, that's all good stuff.
Carol, what do you think? Oh,
I'm okay.
okay. Dan?
I'm fine.
Okay.
There'll be lots of talking to business owners.
Right. I mean, and again, I think the implementation.
But we
of
have
this-
9 months, is that right?
Yeah. As I said, the implementation of this is going to be key
Right.
to, you know, do the underground work and the surface work with the minimum amount of disruption and coordinate it.
And, you know, moving parking spots that, in front of buildings that normally have them, so,
Right.
yeah.
Well, we've had conversation anyway with the owners of the businesses that were going to impact the greatest anyway, I'm assuming.
We've had some, but to be honest with you, right now, we've not broached this subject with them. It's gonna move.
Not in front of the Barnes building. We
No.
haven't,
Yeah.
No,
because that building, or that restaurant's changed hands since this
Yeah.
design first came out.
and the Steedman building,
Those I have talked to, and they are
Those-
100% on board.
they are
They
losing
followed
all
the
of
downtown
theirs.
Process, or, so Martin West had sold that to
Right.
reset owners, and they're super, super nice people, and they're excited to see the downtown plan when it came through last year, and again, are on board. The big, you know, question is going to be the steakhouse and the circulation there for the parking, because anytime you are effectively looking to reroute all of the traffic on a street, it's obviously something that's got to be worked out.
I know one thing, we can do most of our digging every Monday. Ain't gonna bother anybody downtown on Monday.
Yeah.
It's true, everybody's closed on Monday.
Yeah,
And I think, you know, we have a role to play with that in terms of some, you know, facade and environs grants that we talked about and putting in the budget, you know, if we can help them make their businesses look better so that they're rehabbing while we're rehabbing on the outside, and, you know, everyone looks better when it's all redone. I think, you know, we could also do some, we talked about this a little bit, you know, do some work with business skills classes and things like that we had talked, you know, a long time ago about with seminars and things like that. You know, that might be some way as well to help people, you know, boost the businesses that they have so they won't be hurt as badly by lost foot traffic if there is lost foot traffic, and do a lot more with signage and things like that. So,
Okay.
any other thoughts on this? I don't think that this has to be an action item. I wish Dave had just left. But I don't think this has to be an action item.
says discussion and possible action.
Okay, do you want to take possible action to move forward on the professional services
Professional service
agreement?
agreement.
And do you want to give him direction on, oh, there you go. So do you want us to move forward, give you direction to move forward with the professional services agreement? Okay. So we need action to move forward on the professional services agreement between the MEDC and Gunda Corporation, and to front load the contract financially from the 2022 fiscal year budget. Would that work? Okay. So moved.
I'll make that motion, what you said.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, then,
I'll
you're
second his
second. I made my motion, you can have.
Oh,
a
you did?
second.
Okay, I'll have
It has been
second.
moved and seconded that we move forward on the professional services agreement between the MEDC and Gunda Corporation LLC for the engineering services for McCown Street improvements, and also to front load the fees from the FY 2022 budget. This motion is debatable, amendable, and requires a majority vote. Any further discussion on this item?
Now, is this to upfront 150 or go for the 286?
Upfront, like 150 to 160 from our corridor enhancement downtown corridor enhancement budget line item. Any further discussion? All those in favor of moving forward regarding the professional services agreement between the MEDC and Gunda Corporation for the engineering services for McCown Street improvements and front-loading the fees from the 2022 budget line item, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. The motion carries unanimously, and we will move forward regarding the professional services agreement between the MEDC and Gunda Corporation for engineering services for McCown Street improvements and front-loading the payment from the FY 2022 budget. Item number 9, discussion and possible action on setting a... Oops.
Did you vote here? Did she say unanimous? And you voted?
No, did you say
Oh, I'm
unanimous?
sorry.
No, I abstained from discussion and voting, so.
Sorry, you're right. Sorry. So that would be a 5 to...
Or 4 with 1 abstention?
No, it's 5 because I voted.
Oh, sorry.
So it's a 5-0 unanimous with 1 abstention, right? Abstaining. Thank you.
Gotcha. Thank you, sorry about that.
Item number
Good
9,
catch.
discussion and possible action on setting a date for the Montgomery Snow Party. So at the budget workshop, when we were discussing line items for various events, the snow party came up, and since it was already a 2-hour meeting, we decided to push it off to the next 2-hour meeting that we were going to have and discuss the snow party, whether it was best to have it on the same day as the Christmas parade when we had thousands of people downtown, or whether we should have it on a different day when we might be able to draw more people separately to downtown. And we didn't come up with a distinct answer, so we decided to see what y'all thought and discuss it more. So December 3rd is Light Up the Park, and it's also Heavy Trash Day. So, we've got our priorities. Heavy Trash Day it's really important to the city. So
Yes, don't cancel that.
I was gonna say the ISD property is pretty busy that day. The parade will be the 10th. And then the 17th is the weekend before New Year's Eve.
I don't know. My personal opinion is when the parade's going on, it creates a bigger
You
problem.
throw $20,000 out there, you want to have some people.
Yeah, that was my opinion too. If we're gonna split it up, you're gonna have less of a draw to the, and it's less, yeah. I don't know if I want to spend all that money on something when it's a separate event from the Christmas thing. The whole thing is to make it one big event. If we can't do that, then I'll
It becomes an all-day event versus just the morning.
Yeah, I think it was set up to retain people in town to where they'll do business.
Yeah, so I would say if we have to split it up, that we just don't do the snow party.
We don't have to split it up. It's just a thought of whether we draw more people just for that event, or whether people are just coming for the parade and then leaving because of the parking and the traffic and that kind of thing, or whether we thought it was, whether we thought it would draw more people as a standalone event.
I'd like to keep it together.
Okay. Done. I don't think we need to vote unless it's not that kind of item, unless y'all would like to vote.
No.
Okay.
It's okay. We're going to leave it.
We're gonna leave it with the
Yeah.
parade.
Yeah.
All right then, item number 10, discussion and possible action on placement of an advertisement within the Montgomery Area Chamber of Commerce map. So if you look in your backup information, you can see the ad that we're talking about. The Chamber of Commerce has a map product that they put out. Some of you may have actually seen it. It's like a big fold-away map, about that big. And our piece is like down by the, what do you call it? The part where all the streets are, the street finder. And we did it last year. The city paid for it, but I'm not sure the city is, Carol thought the city shouldn't actually be paying for things like that. So, but it is something that the MEDC has the budget for, from brochures and printed literature. It costs $1,350 for the map. There's information on page 100, 101, 102, and 103 in your backup.
Now, they're doing this map once a year.
Once a year. And 5,000 copies, so $1,300, $1,350 gets you 5,000, your placement and 5,000 map. Prints or whatever, a run of 5,000 copies. And it's nice quality paper.
Sounds like a bargain.
We're shipping $3.70 a bag. You're interested?
No, it's actually the other way around.
Is it?
Yeah,
Oh, did I do the math wrong?
yeah, invert that, 30 cents.
Okay, that's why I'm.
Move that decimal, Dick.
I'm definitely one of those, I like to read stuff, you know, as opposed to a digital version of it.
I
I
know,
print everything
we've
at
been
work.
back and forth, I mean, I think, you know, for the money, the digital advertising, your money goes so much further, but there's definitely a time when, you know, and a place for the physical copy of things. And I mean, the map is gigantic, so, you know, it's hard when you do the map of Montgomery and the surrounding area to do it on, like a postcard or on your phone, although you can't, you know, zoom in with your thumbs, but it's a good product. And 104 and 105 have the picture of the map itself and where our ad is placed within it. Or a mock-up of it anyway. Are there any questions?
I guess I'll make a motion to spend $1,350 for an ad in the MACC map.
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded that we spend $1,350 for an ad in the MAC map. I assume you would like it to also be taken from brochures and printed literature line item. This
Yes.
motion is debatable, amendable, and requires a majority vote. Any further discussion on this item? All those in favor of spending $1,350 for an ad in the MAC map from the brochures and printed literature line item, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. The motion carries unanimously, and we will spend $1,350 for an ad in the MAC map. That's it. Item number 11, consideration of possible action on publishing the RFP for wayfinding. So we talked a lot at the last meeting about wayfinding, and attached is the wayfinding RFP. That's page 106 through 114-ish. For people's perusal. Are there any questions, comments, additions? Do you think that this meets the goals of the wayfinding?
Are there gonna be like conceptuals or drawings of the wayfinder?
Yeah, so this includes like design guides of materials and layouts and things like that, as well as all of the, you know, the fonts, the colors,
Yeah.
all of those things so that we can, you know, they should be giving us layouts of the items themselves for suggested
To
signs,
choose
but then we
from.
can also do our own going forward and make them consistent with what we, you know, their original.
So it'd include a layout of where the signs would go, and then like a schematic or, you know, section view of what the signs would look like as far as colors and details and stuff like that.
Right, so on page 111, so it's, site plan indicates the location of signs, scaled and broken into subtypes as needed, list of recommended terminology and/or design icons and branding for primary and secondary destinations, design for each type of proposed sign, including materials and digital specifications, sign content and type for each location, cost estimates for fabrication and installation, shop or construction drawings with all necessary information to supply a fabricator and installer, full color renderings including line art file, color profiles, etc., master list, printed digital copy of fonts, icons, colors, materials, etc. used in branding, and commercial rights to perpetual use of all fonts and colors used in branding, and implementation.
And this is basically the downtown area?
Yes and no. I mean, I think that we would, you know, part of the plan
105.
is to get people out of their cars in downtown, but the signage would be
Right.
used to, throughout the city, to get people to our various destinations.
Is it going
Because we would want wayfinding signage to like the library and Fernland, stuff like that, which is outside the downtown.
Right, so we would want some stuff on.
Store
105.
cones?
Yeah, but-
We would want people to have people on 105 know how to get to downtown, and I know that there's text stop specific signage, but that doesn't mean that we can't negotiate with private property owners to place signs on their private property. The text stop signage only works for the text stop right away, so we could have a mixture.
And 149 is considered text dot.
Yes.
Well, in the right of way.
Yeah.
Because if you do that, then they'll just be, you know, for like the library, they just have the person reading the book icon. It doesn't end, you know, it just says like that way. It doesn't really, you know.
But for instance, you could put a sign within the community center lot that's outside the right of way, potentially.
Just over the wall.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, I'm not sure that the wall is even outside the right of way, so.
Yeah, I don't know exactly where that line is. Can't imply this the, you know, stone wall, but.
Exactly. So they're, you know, they're usually different size signs for how fast people are driving, so the information you put on them is different. I mean, so the idea is to get people to want to go where you want them to go, and then you provide them with more information depending on how they're being transported.
So all we're doing is requesting the RFP?
Yes, if you're happy with what the RFP includes, then yes. Just direction on to publish or not to publish, that's the question.
Okay, I make a motion to publish a RFP for wayfinding.
Also,
I second.
It's been moved and seconded that we publish the RFP for wayfinding. This motion is debatable, amendable, and requires a majority vote. Any further discussion? All those in favor of publishing the wayfinding RFP say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. The motion carries unanimously, and we will publish the wayfinding RFP. Item number 12, city engineers report and monthly development reports. We'll do 12 and 13 together.
You've got in your packet both the engineer's report and the development report. I'll just skip down to the map real quick on the, if you have any questions on the written portion of the engineer's report, we're happy to answer that. But just skipping down to their map, talking about a few of the economic development things that I'm sure you guys have talked about thus far. Some activities still down on the east end in terms of the commercial with the shops and both those guys as well as the Milestone guys. Where the Kroger are, there's several pad sites under development there, the express oil change in the shops, Discount Tire. That's one of the ones that I know that you guys have spoken about. That's going to be a mobility improvement when the private drive is connected there. That'll get you to Kroger without getting on 105. We've got Popeyes there, as well as Shipley's has been on again, off again there right near the fire station.
on their corner.
And so they've got a corner lot that what they're trying to do is they would like to develop half of that lot and be able to subdivide and sell the other half of the lot. On the north side of town in Summit Business Park, things seem to be picking up there. We've got one new reserve that's out on 1097 frontage that's right now under engineering review, and got in the past week, if I count the ones I should be getting tomorrow, 5 new buildings out in Summit Business Park. So things seem to be, you know, kind of picking back up. But of course, it's a roller coaster out there, and we'll see, you know, how they're feeling in, 6 months. But they're building out, new shells for about 5 of the buildings, and plus what's coming there on 1097. Anybody got any questions or thoughts on the engineer's report, or jump over to the development, which I've kind of done, but I'll just hit a couple points there on the residential side that I didn't in the development report. Again, residential activity seems high. It's you look out and listen to the markets, it seems like a bit of a, uncertain time. We'll see with the interest rates rising and, the continued cost of construction and the pressures there. It certainly, locally here, we're not seeing things start to fall off a cliff, but again, the whole notion of financial, either a recession, which, some argue that we're in now because we've got 2 quarters of negative growth, or whether or not one is coming. Certainly the housing market here, a lot of this stuff gets baked into the cake and there's a lag lag time between when stuff happens in the markets and when the builders and developers actually start moving. Those guys are committed, they've got their money, they're doing their developments. We've got, on the residential side, 8 new houses completed in May and 11 new permits issued in May. Again, we've gone anywhere from 20 a month on new starts. Our historical average is about 8 houses a month, so again, still plenty of residential activity here. Redbird Meadows, the big one over southwest corner of the city, about 400 acres or so, about 550 rooftops. They're now in the design process, and we'll be getting ready to go through the planning and all of that stuff as they get closer to getting started on phase 1. Clipper sidewalks I mentioned, since we're getting very close to that. Clipper sidewalks, got the easement documents back from the attorneys, got them all buttoned up with the meets and bounds to get over to the MISD and the Historical Society to get signed. So we're one step closer there. Council will be making a selection on a contractor for that project at the next meeting, next Tuesday. Anything that you guys have questions on, I'll be happy to answer or comment.
So the construction drawings for Clipper are done?
They are, as far as I know, because yes, it did go out.
Selecting contractor, yeah.
Yeah. It did go out to bid, and so we're ready to keep going.
Anyone else? All right then, your permission will move on to executive session. The MEDC Board of Directors reserves the right to discuss any of the items listed specifically under this heading or for any items listed above in executive closed session as permitted by law, including if they meet the qualifications in sections 551.071, consultations with attorney, 551.072, deliberation regarding real property, 551.073, deliberation regarding gifts, 551.074, personnel matters, 551.076, deliberation regarding security devices, and 551.087, deliberation regarding economic development negotiations of Chapter 551 of the Government Code of the State of Texas. It is 7:17 and I am recessing us into executive session.
That's why I keep it.
Are you ready? All right, it's 7:38 and we are back in session. After the executive session, we do not have any action items from our executive session. Is there anything for board inquiry? Does anyone have anything they want to follow up on, questions they want to address next meeting?
Just a comment, I came into contact with a lady from Business Sweden, the Swedish Trade and Investment Council, Felicia Steen, asking us what would be our interest in a battery-related manufacturing plant. And I told her I would take it to MEDC first, kind of get some input there. This is a high-tech type of business. We've got 500 and something custom homes about to be built. I'm certainly looking for something that pays well, that brings jobs for paying well customers, that type of thing. Where exactly I would envision this type of thing being, I don't know. I would think Lone Star Loop might be part of that. But anyway, what is your feeling on, now, we don't have to get political on batteries and stuff, but I mean, let's face it, there is that battery manufacturing plant probable need, and somewhere in Houston, I don't know if there's one nearby, or, I mean, obviously she would not have contacted us if she didn't think it was a plausible thing.
So definitely the thing to ask would be how much land would you need for it, and utility hookups, because that might be between the two a really determining factor, because you know, our water services don't reach to the ETJ really.
Right.
We have very few out-of-city customers, and then
don't
there
really-
should be rail hookups, because that's the other, their transportation links, because that's a big limitation for the city since we're not on any rail lines.
Yeah.
And battery materials, or at least once they're completed anyway, they're highly,
Yeah, I was trying to envision where they would put that, and would it
Right.
need to be near a rail line?
The NSF?
There's a lot of questions.
Western, somewhere in that western deal
Yeah,
where,
that's where the rail line is.
where the railroad,
there is, but
We don't have an
our water
industrial-
rights only extend to the high school,
yeah.
so that's very limiting.
Yeah, we have, yeah, there's a lot of questions.
So
Where it would go, what kind of needs, like utility needs, access, all
We
that
would
stuff.
certainly love to hear more.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I'll just tell her we're interested, but we have some questions.
I mean, we don't, typically they go to those industrial parks that are set up for that kind of
Right.
stuff. We don't have one of those,
As
so.
I say, ask her about hazardous materials handling and things like that, because that might get the chief involved. Although I think Dave is probably now our FEMA representative. So he or Mike might be more familiar with the manual on hazardous materials.
Certainly found out that it's not my area of expertise, but I know how to get the right.
I was gonna say, but it will be tomorrow.
Yes, yeah. Know where to go for the information.
Because generally those heavy metals are fine when before they're stirred together, but then afterwards there might be limitations on how close they can be to housing and things like that.
Okay. That's all I had.
Awesome. Anyone else?
Has there ever been any consideration of having like a water park for quality of life purposes for kids?
So, yes, I mean, it's
Or rec
something that
centers.
I've personally been interested in for a while. The minimum price for a decent sized one is you're talking about a splash pad,
Yeah,
right?
basically.
For a decent sized one, it's like $250,000. And then, you know, if you look at where we have parks and land, you know, obviously Fernland is out, Memory Park is out, and I personally think that Cedar Break is out, just because it's so close to the road and parking is such an issue,
Yeah.
which kind of leaves us with Homecoming, which I think would be wonderful, although parking is definitely limited there.
You have property out by the fire station.
We do. We do. Which, as somebody just reminded us, was going to waste.
Yes.
Yeah, I just see it as an amenity that the city would benefit from as far as attracting families to the city.
Yes.
It's just-
I mean, I think, redevelopment of the ISD property could really be an interesting thing for our future to make it a multi-use, especially if it does not end up becoming developed for a specific building, but to have it be a multi-use grounds for like a park, a pavilion, for farmers market or, other gatherings, things like that, for some of our festivals where to remove pressure from downtown, but to keep it close to downtown so that downtown receives the benefit of people coming to the city, but not the crunch of closed streets and so much traffic.
Well, with the growth in this area, with just being on the development side and knowing what's coming in with the homes and even all the way to Plantersville, between downtown and the Kroger, that's your area. It's going to explode in the next
Yeah,
5 years.
that's right. That's
You're not
right.
going to stop it. So
Yeah.
either get with it or get blown out, so.
Those splash pads, I would think, correct me if I'm wrong, but those are the types of things that corporate people may be interested in sponsoring. It's a nice little sign that says, we did this. Just a thought.
Logo in the concrete.
Yep.
It's a possibility, and, obviously Texas and water use are kind of, it's a touchy subject, but those are good because, they're generally safe because the water doesn't pool, so children can use them safely, but then, it's not high use in terms of water, water wasting. You generally don't recycle the water, just in case you think
There's
of
water
that,
and
but
grass all around it.
you
Gray
could,
water.
you could turn it to gray water and use
Yeah.
it for
I
irrigation.
wouldn't dump it down the drain, that's for sure.
What's that?
I wouldn't run it down the drain. I'd use it for definitely recycled gray water. And you can push that out a pretty good ways.
Do something like that, with very little, added stuff, but, to your point, most of those systems now aren't designed as a recirculating system, and that leaves you with a monthly, then, or you've got your weekly maintenance or monthly maintenance cost, for filters and things like that, but you can certainly still recapture that water without, wanting to put it back into the potable water supply.
Well, and you've got small fees or memberships or whatever too, for, summer passes to where it offsets some of that cost too.
You could, although possibly the cost of having an employee there to check might actually offset the cost, the value of the fees. You'd be better probably renting it in the evenings or something like that for corporate or parties or things like that. But it's a great idea. I think, I'd love to see something like that. And the ISD property is a perfect location for it. Because it is central and we've got so much residential right there. Although again, doing something special in homecoming would be a nice upgrade to that park. That doesn't see a ton of investment, although it is looking particularly nice. It has the benches and they put in a new fence a couple of years ago. They keep it up, but it doesn't get quite the attention from individual donors that that Memory Park does, for instance. Any other comments, questions? Then I call us, motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously and we're adjourned at 7:57. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.